Imagine being at a convention and going.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I'm your host, Dan Wickline. Yeah, it's the first time I've actually said that. Used to do it where I would just say some silly name afterwards. But I stopped doing that. That got old. But so we are, this is Wednesday, February 2nd. Can you believe it's February already? It was just 2020. And now we're at 2/2/2022. It's kind of ridiculous. All right, folks, we are going to talk today about Legend of Vox Machina. And we're going to get into that. And of course, that was a tabletop role-playing live play game that of a bunch of voice actors that then became one of the biggest sensations online. It went into a Kickstarter to do the animated series, which became the biggest Kickstarter campaign in history. And now we have a TV show from it, which is fantastic. But before we get into that, I do want to mention a few things. I do want to mention my Kickstarter. My Kickstarter is coming to an end. We are at 28 hours to go as of right now. And at this time last week, I was going, I hope we make 40,000. Hope we can get to 40,000. That was 42. And then they were like, oh, the next goal is going to be 42,500. We're going to make them all hardcovers. So the Karma graphic novel would become all of them. Whether you got the Sedgwick cover, you got the Mirka and Dolph cover, you got one of the Mike D. Pascal covers, they'd all be hardcovers, which was great. Howdy, Jeff. Good to see you. So I was excited for that, and we hit it on Sunday, and I got really jazzed about that. And then everybody tells me, well, by the end, it usually kind of picks up a little bit. Well, it's definitely picking up. In the last couple days, we started hitting it again, and we are at 49,353. And our initial goal, you said your beginning goal that you make, but you have that internal goal that you want to hit, that, oh, well, if we hit this, then we'll do a sequel, we'll do this, we'll do that. That internal goal was 50,000. We are $650 from that. And I'm kind of freaking out on the inside. Over 1,000 people, almost 1,100 people have backed this Kickstarter, have backed this graphic novel. And like I said, it's kind of freaking me out on the inside because we're that close to what seemed like a pie in the sky goal when we started. And now I so want to hit it. I really want to. A handful of more people, 650. It looks like it's doable. I'm hoping. I don't want to jinx it, but I would love to do more with this. I mean, it's a story that I'm really proud of. It's a story that means a lot to me. There's a lot of personal in it. But to be able to continue it, be able to continue the relationship between Alex and Karma would just mean so much to me. So I'm hoping that if you're listening to this and you haven't backed yet, you'll click on the link that Kyle was nice enough to put into chat and check out the campaign. If you've already backed it, maybe you can share that link with your friends. Try to see if we can get just a little bit more. Just get to that 50,000. We're so close, and this would be such a big thing for me. So thank you for everybody who's backed it. Thank you for putting up with this for the last 30 days. Man, am I. I am by nature an introvert. I kind of psych myself up to come and do the show. And then I go and I like hide in a corner for a while by myself to kind of re-energize. To spend 30 days self-promoting and for pushing this book and doing extra live shows and doing extra podcasts and Miss Jen's show and the Pod XP or the was it a Pop XP show and a couple interviews and articles and just talking about this as much as I can. It's taken a lot. So I swear to you that tomorrow's show will talk about the Book of Boba Fett, which is an amazing episode, and I cannot wait to talk about it. But I want to give everybody a chance to see it, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. After that, we have maybe a couple hours after that until the campaign ends, and then I'm going to go hide in a dark room somewhere. There's a name for what you are. I mean, an introvert who does extroverted things. Yeah, it's called ridiculous. Or stupid. Or, yeah. So, yeah. Someone has added to the goal, so thank you. We're getting there. No, it's like a mental condition. Yeah. They actually refer to it as an extroverted introvert. Is the term, and I didn't even know what. It's funny. This is a comic-related story. I was at the Phoenix Comic-Con, and I ran into Ross Ritchie, and Ross is the main guy over at Boom Studios, and Ross is a great guy. I've had a chance to talk to him a few times back when things were first starting out. He's a great guy. I haven't done anything at Boom. I'd love to, and I have a lot of good friends over at Boom. But Ross is a really good guy, and he came by, and we talked for a few minutes. I was sitting across from Michael Golden, who's a friend of mine, and I really loved sitting across from him because I got to chat with him most of the day. But Ross came by again. He wanted to get something signed by Michael, but he had a line, and he didn't want to like push the table, so he hung back, saw me, and we chatted. And he was talking about how the conventions always take a lot out of him. And he was talking about how he was an introvert and how, he has to psych himself up for the conventions. And then he goes, and then afterwards, he's just wiped out for a week. And it all clicked in my head. And it's like, but that's what happens to me. And until that point, I always thought an introvert was somebody who didn't like to do stuff, who avoided people, avoided stuff. They try, and I didn't realize that being an introvert or an extrovert isn't about whether or not you like people, or you like going out, or like doing things. It's about how you are fed your energy, how you get your energy. If spending time with other people drains you, whether you like them or not, if it drains you, then you're an introvert. If you get energy from it, if you go and hang out with a bunch of people and you come back wired and just want to go do more stuff, you're an extrovert. So an introvert can go and do those crowd things, can go and do a podcast like this, can talk to people, can spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours talking, but then afterwards they kind of need to be alone. They go get a book and sit by themselves in the corner and read and stuff like that. And that's how they re-energize. And getting to understand that. I did a lot of reading after that to really understand. And you can be an extrovert that hates people. You really can. So Ross really helped me that. I haven't had a chance to talk to him since then, because I'd really love to, and kind of thank him for that, because it really allowed me to start understanding and working towards dealing with that. I know now that I can do these kind of things, but I'm going to need that downtime after. Or, I can't just, if I'm going to go do a 3-day weekend, a convention, I better have Monday and Tuesday where I can just shut down or do as little as possible to kind of get back my energy. So that's just something that I learned, and spending the last 30 days pushing this book and being on as much as possible and trying to be the salesman and just talking about the book. And again, I love this book. I am proud of it. I am proud of everybody who's worked on it, whether it's Carlos, who did the interior art, the covers by Stepan and Mirka, and Michael. Oh, Michael's stuff. I mean, I actually got to work with Michael when he was designing the cover. I shot him photos that I had worked with to give him some ideas. We worked back and forth. Um, the colorists on it, the letterer on it, Joe Rybant, who's edited the book, Vince over at Dynamite, who has been doing a lot of the promotional, Jim Kahurik, who was my boss at Bleeding Cool for a long time, who is now helping do the Kickstarters, running the campaign, Nick himself, who came to me with the proposition of doing a book like this, and then allowing me to just do the story I wanted to do, which was the best part. I mean, he didn't come and tell me, oh, we want you to do this kind of story. This is the genre we'd like to try. What can you do in that genre? And that's been great. So yeah, we're getting near the end. And again, it's pushed up a little more. We're getting even closer. We're 550 away from 50,000. And man, I'm getting, yeah. All right. Let's move on from this. Karma, links in the chat, a little ways up. So I appreciate anybody who's even clicked on the link, who's checked it out. Thank you for putting any time on it. And if you've backed it, you were very special to me, and thank you. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk a little non-comic stuff, I don't know if it's considered pop culture or not, but Kyle and I did a little bit of this last night. We were talking football, but today they announced the new name of the Washington football team. Now, previously they had been the Washington Redskins. And for a long time, people were pushing for the team to change their name, and rightfully so. It was an offensive name, just as was the Cleveland Indians, who are now the Cleveland Guardians. Washington has chosen the name Commanders. And I know there's been a certain amount of backlash about it. Commanders, that's a horrible name. Why would you pick the Commanders? Well, I don't think anybody was going to like whatever name they came up with. And I think that's just the nature we have nowadays. We get used to names. They grow on us. Because you can look at a handful of sports teams, and we're not talking sports right now, we're talking about names. And because the names grow on you, they become second nature. And I see that a lot with the comic movies now, because I'll tell somebody, oh, they're coming out with Ant-Man. What? Why would you name somebody Ant-Man? Well, when it came out in the 1960s, it sounded like a good name. Or Iron Man, or Black Knight, or some of these character names. And now, Aquaman in the 30s, and Superman and Batman. And we've had these names for so long, they sound cool to us. But if they were just now introduced, how cool would they sound? I mean, if you really coming up with a new name for a character, that's one of the hardest things to do. And it doesn't matter whether it's a comic book, a novel cover, a football team, or any of those things. It's tough. It's really tough to come up with a name that people are going to instantly like. It's more that you come up with the name and it grows on people. I look at Jim Butcher. Jim Butcher came up with his first novel was called Stormfront. It's a good title. But the series is called The Dresden Files. But that was so downplayed And then the second book came out. It was, the second book in the Dresden Files. And I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but, that was the name that sold by. And it started getting, but the Dresden Files now is such a positive, people, oh yeah, Dresden Files, it's great. But again, it had to build up to that name. So when it comes out, the Washington Commanders, it doesn't roll off the tongue. It's not instant recognition. It's a new name. It's brand new, and we're still kind of getting used to it. So any of the negativity out there, just ignore it. There's like people already called, it's the Washington Commies. Really? Washington, D.C., the commander-in-chief is there. The commanders. Joe Biden posted or tweeted a picture of his dog, Commander, and said, well, I'm sure there's room enough in Washington for 2 commanders. And Ron Rivera, who is one of my favorite coaches in the NFL, the head coach of Washington. He used to be the coach of the Panthers. He was a player for many years. He was part of the great Chicago defense. Ron Rivera posted back, basically telling the president, tell Commander he is welcomed at practice anytime. That was a great response, a great little back and forth. The team is keeping the same colors. They're still going to look the same. They're not going to have an Indian-themed logo anymore, which is good. They're going by the Commanders. And 2 years from now, it'll roll off the tongue a lot better. It's like the Washington basketball team. They used to be the Washington Bullets. That's not such a bueno name anymore, so they changed it to the Washington Wizards. It sounded weird at the time, but now, Washington Wizards. And look at how many other weird names we accept as completely normal nowadays. The Los Angeles Dodgers. Dodgers. They're named because they used to play at, I think it was Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, and it had streetcars running both ways outside of the stadium. So when you were running to the stadium, you had to dodge the streetcars. And that's where they got the name from. They were the Brooklyn Streetcar Dodgers. They dropped the streetcar part, became the Brooklyn Dodgers. Then they moved to LA and they kept the Dodgers name. Staying in LA, the Lakers. The Lakers are named because they used to be in Minnesota, where there's a lot of lakes. Not a lot of lakes out here in LA. But we're still the Lakers. The Utah Jazz? Do you think of jazz music when you think of Utah? No, because they started in New Orleans and then moved. See, a lot of these names just don't make sense. Or even I think it's the Brooklyn Nets now. They used to be the New Jersey Nets. You're named after a part of the equipment. The Seattle Seahawks. How threatening is a Seahawk? Or, I have to bring up this one, the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're named after a poisoned nut.
You keep that name out of your mouth, Dan Wickline.
A poisoned nut.
Keep that name out of your mouth, Dan Wickline.
So, there are so many sports teams' names that come and go, and we get used to them, and then there's a history to them once they build up. So the Washington Commanders are a brand new name. They just got announced today. Terrific. Let's see how it goes. They've got a great coach. They have on the owner. He can kind of interfere things, but they're trying to clean up. They're working on putting a team together. They probably need a better quarterback, but they get some wins. They have a good defense. Hopefully they'll be better next year. And their inaugural season as the Commanders will be a positive one. Don't just hate something because it's new or because it's different or because you want the old name, because It was offensive to a lot of people. It's a name we should have gotten rid of a long time ago. Just like the Cleveland Indians, just like the Atlanta Braves. I think they're still the Braves. I don't think Kyle, have the Braves changed their name yet?
The Braves are still the Braves, but the difference between the Braves and, say,
Red.
the other two we've referenced is that one is a positional reference. Same reason the Kansas City Chiefs aren't decrying that name. Is it's more of a
title.
positional. Yeah, it's a title.
Yeah.
You know, they're celebrating a part of the culture as opposed to
Right.
appropriating it.
A brave, a chief, a warrior, those kind of names, as opposed to what the Washington team was basically a racial slur.
Yeah, an epithet. Yep.
Yeah. So
real quick, Dan.
Yeah.
I have a take on this real quick.
Please.
I think they should have kept the name football team.
A lot of people do.
I am a big fan of the way they do things in the Premier League, where it's, you know, we're the associated football team of Liverpool. We're, you know, it's about your city, and you have a mascot, sure, but it's like that's not what you're known as. You know, so
Yeah.
I also need to show you where I'm at. We got like blizzard conditions here, so I'm working from home.
Isn't that the Miami University over there?
That was from the year we beat them in the national title game. Stole that off of his lamppost in Tempe.
What position were you playing?
Drunk fan.
Yeah. Look, I get that you are a huge Ohio State fan. I've dealt with a lot of huge Ohio State fans. That's how I became a Michigan fan.
It's how most people become Michigan fans, if I'm being honest.
Well, that and the movie Red Dawn. But because I'm not a college football guy, I like to wait until they kind of weed out all the lesser players and get to the pros. But I get it. I understand it, and more power to you. But your team is named after a poison nut.
There's more history to it than that, but in the end, yes.
Yeah. So it is a good illustration of my point. It's a perfect illustration of my point.
Well, I mean, I would say this. Have you ever hit a Wolverine with a car? Hurts the cat more than the car. Like, also not a great mascot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of the things, Nebraska has the worst mascot. We all agree that a Cornhusker is a bad mascot. It's just a dude who is like cleaning corn. Like, that's a bad mascot.
What about the Green Bay Packers? The Pittsburgh Steelers?
Hold on. I was just talking Big Ten football.
Yeah, but my point
Nebraska's the worst. I mean, Maryland is a turtle.
Yes. The turtle.
Like, there's a lot of bad ones in the Big Ten.
Oregon is a duck.
Sure.
I'll take a Wolverine over a duck any day.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but when you have teams like the Nittany Lions, which is Murder Kitten, and the Spartans, and, you know, I mean, what the hell's a Hawkeye?
What the hell's an Aggie?
Well, that's true.
Or a Crimson Tide?
That is Crimson Tide is a tide that is dyed red by the blood of your enemies, apparently. Speaking of things that are dyed red by the blood of your enemies, Vox Machina was bloody.
Is this your hint of Dan, stop going on tangents? You did that yesterday too. Now go back to the show.
No, it's just I was looking up old Critical Role stuff, and while you were talking, and I'm like, oh, they cranked the violence level on this up like 2 or 3.
Yeah, so. They did. They definitely did. But
the Delta State University Fighting Okra. All right, they lose.
Wait, is that real?
I don't have any idea, but They definitely lose. Delta State.
The only thing funnier if it was the Delta State University fighting Oprahs.
It is a real school. In Cleveland, Mississippi.
There is okay.
Their colors are green and white.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Their athletics. Here we go. I don't see a team name here. So
in Alabama, there is a minor league baseball team. I think they're in Birmingham.
The Birmingham Biscuits.
Yes, the Birmingham Biscuits.
That's not even the weirdest one.
No, but it's a great name.
Oh yeah.
Are you really going to fear a biscuit?
It's true.
And their mascot even has butter.
Fort Wayne, Indiana has the apple seeds for Johnny Appleseed.
Out here in California, we have the Rancho Quakes.
Mm-hmm. There's one, and I'm trying to think of, I forget where it's at, but they are the Butter.
Just the Butter?
Yep, that's their name, the Butter.
The Butter.
They're one of those independent low minor league teams where the name and the mascot and the gimmicks are like the only reason people show up.
Yeah.
Because if you wanted to go watch Little League Baseball, you'd go watch Little League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think it's minor league. Little League Baseball is different.
No, I mean, this is basically Little League Baseball, only they're professionals.
Yeah. But I think we've made my point that there are some really less than terrific names out there.
So I've gone down the rabbit hole on this Delta State thing.
Yeah.
Their logo is the Delta sign with the word state written through it.
Okay.
I just hope they're actually the Fighting Mathletes. They are, in fact, the Fighting Okra or the Statesman. There's a couple.
Statesman's a little better than Okra, but not by much.
Yep.
Is okra like the national plant or national fruit or vegetable?
I have no idea. I don't really want to know.
Yes, you do. You know you do.
NCAA.com. Just what is a fighting okra?
Now, see, I'm going to go. There's two ways you could play that. You could do the animated one that the okra comes running in with baseball bats. Or you could think of it more like the okra is a weapon and like have two pieces of okra connected to a chain like nunchucks.
It's a green like piece of okra with arms and legs and boxing gloves.
Thank you for tuning in for the Dan Wickline Show. We will be talking about Vox Machina right after this commercial break. So we'll be right back in just a minute.
I need a minute. Yeah, we'll be back.
Yeah. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's talk The Legend of Vox Machina. We will cover it for the next half hour. We'll give you everything you need to know. And then following us will be Comic Collectibles with Rex and John. They got some great books coming up, including books signed by Greg Land, Steve Epting, Alec Ross, and Jim Lee. There's a Justice League signed by Jim Lee, Justice League #1, written by Jeff Johns, that I may be sticking around to try to get myself because I'm a big Jim Lee fan. So stick around for that after the show, but let's get into The Legend of Vox Machina. Now, Jeff here says that he is completely unfamiliar with that. The Legend of Vox Machina is part of Critical Role. Now, for those of you who know who Critical Role is, great. If you don't, Critical Role is a group of voice actors that have been friends for a very long time, and they play a D&D game together. And one day they decided to start filming it. It got picked up by Geek and Sundry, and they started airing it. And their first campaign became known as Vox Machina. That was the group name. Each campaign they have gone on, the group eventually finds their own name. Campaign 2, which ended not that long ago, became known as the Mighty Nine, but not Nine, Nein. And there was never 9 people in the group. Well, the third campaign has recently started. They have all new characters again. And I don't think they've got a team name yet, but I'm not caught up on that. I never really watched the first campaign. I didn't get into Dungeons and Dragons myself until they were well into season 2 or campaign 2. And then when I did start going out and watch some of these live play games, I watched them, and I watched some Roll20 stuff, Roll20 Presents. And that's kind of how I taught myself to be a dungeon master, watching Matt Mercer as a dungeon master. By the way, if you want to learn to be a dungeon master, watching Matt Mercer, you have to do it with a grain of salt because he is super talented in both his storytelling and his voices. So he is on a level that many of us cannot get to. But that said, they've built a huge fan base. The fan base are called the Critters. And the group that makes up Vox Machina or Critical Role, Matt Mercer, he's done a lot of different voice work over the years, including if you play Overwatch, he does the voice of, they just changed the character's name, but it's the cowboy in Overwatch. Laura Bailey is in the show. She does the voice of, I think it's Black Widow in the Avengers game. Sam Riegel, Liam O'Brien, Taliesin Jaffe, Marsha Ray, Travis Willingham, and probably the one you might recognize the most is Ashley Johnson. Ashley was the waitress in the Avengers movie that Cap saves. She is also a regular on the TV show Blind Sight, the one with Jamie Alexander all tattooed up. I think that show came to an end recently. Blind Spot. Thank you. She was a regular on that. She was the CSI tech on that, or the crime scene tech on that. So they've got kind of a celebrated cast, but they're all friends growing up and stuff. Well, they decided while doing the second campaign, as things were getting really popular and their popularity was growing, they decided to do a Kickstarter to do an episode of Vox Machina as an animated show. The Kickstarter blew up, made multiple $1 million. It's the highest Kickstarter campaign in the history of Kickstarter. They added to the point where it became a 6-episode series. They're doing, originally it would have been just the first 2 episodes we saw would have been it. Oh yes, Ashley Johnson was the youngest kid on Growing Pains as well. That is true. Drew me off for a second. Well, as they did this and it got bigger, Amazon got involved and offered to distribute it and put it out on Prime. So this thing got really huge. And like I said, originally they were just going to do, which would have been the first 2 episodes, would have been what the Kickstarter was for, but it grew and grew. Now we're getting 6 episodes. Now, besides the original cast, though, Matt does all the other voices in the game. So when they're playing, Matt does anybody who's not. But they did have special guests that would come in occasionally, more so in Campaign 2 than in Campaign 1. But most of the time, Matt Mercer did every other character that came in. Well, now that they had this, animated series and Amazon backing it, they started adding some people to it, other voice actors. Kari Payton is another voice actor who's been on on Campaign 2, but he's come on to play the Sovereign Uriel of Taldori. Stephanie Beatriz has come on. Indira Varma from, God, you've seen her in a lot of things. I want to say, I cannot think of real quick. Let me click on her just to. Oh, she was in Rome. She's going to be in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. But what is the thing I'm thinking of? Splitting Image, Carnival Row, Patrick Melrose, Game of Thrones. She was in Game of Thrones. That was it. So Indira Varma is in it. Gray Griffin, who has done the voice of Wonder Woman and a bunch of other characters. Logic is in it. But they got some really big names, too. They got Tony Hale from Veep. They got Felicia Day, who has really grown or gotten more popular. They got David Tennant from Doctor Who. So this really grew. Now, there's 3 episodes that are out so far, and the first 2 are one story arc. And it's basically the introduction to Vox Machina. There's a handful of characters. Now, if you're a D&D player, you will recognize the majority of these types of characters. There's Vex, who is a hunter, and her twin brother Vax, who's a rogue. There is Calith, who's a druid. Pike, who is a priest. I think she's a priest, not a paladin. There's Scanlan, who's a bard. And then the one that Grog, who's a barbarian. And the one that doesn't quite fit right is Percival, or Percy. And the reason Percy doesn't fit is that when they started playing the campaign, they actually were playing Pathfinder, not D&D. And Pathfinder kind of sits on top of D&D. They use very similar rules. And if you know how to play D&D, you can definitely play Pathfinder. But they've got certain things additional things that D&D doesn't have. And that is a gunslinger. So Percival's a gunslinger. So when they moved it back over, when 5e came out, and they decided to start playing 5e, Matt had to tweak some things to keep Percy's character intact. So that's why it seems kind of out of place that this guy is running around with guns. But he fits in. But this whole world Matt Mercer's created called Taldore. And he's done such a good job with it that now Wizards of the Coast and D&D are expanding into his world. They are creating rule books, source books, and adventures in his world as part of D&D. So now you can pick up the Tal'Dorei books, and you can play in the world that this is created in. Now, that aside, the story itself is this is a group of adventurers like any other D&D group, where they get together. They usually start in a pub, and this series starts in a pub as well, which leads to a pub brawl, as they always do, and getting thrown out of the pub. These are all standard tropes for D&D. So if you haven't played D&D, know that you're probably going to start your campaign in a pub. Or it just happens because it's the easiest place to pull everybody together. I even started a campaign once in a jail after a pub brawl because it just made sense. Now, we get introduced, they're already together. So we're not going to take the time to figure out how this group got together, which is always a tough part of any game. But they're already together, and they go to follow this job of basically there's some mysterious creature on the outskirts of Tal'Dorei who is killing things, and they need a group of adventurers to come in and take it out. They don't want to send the troops because they don't know what they're fighting against, so they want to use mercenaries. And the last few mercenary groups they've sent out there have all been destroyed. And they roll off some of the names of some of these other groups, and one of them is the Murder Hobos, which is a D&D term, which basically means that if your group is a group of murder hobos, that means all you do is you run around killing things. You don't actually try to follow the story. You know, an adventurer or somebody comes up out of the blue, we kill it. What? You haven't even met this person. We kill him. I shoot. That's a murder hobo group. Another group is the treasure goblins, and that's another name they use. And treasure goblins are basically all they care about is gold and the money. So, is there any gold in the room? No. Then we leave. That's a treasure goblin group. So this group, they need money. There's a thing from the king to go on this quest. They get sent, and it turns out, spoiler. You want to put the little spoiler? But I don't think we need to roll the credit, but just put the little spoiler banner up. The monster is a big deal. Still waiting for, there we go. The monster is a dragon. It's a blue dragon. And blue dragons are kind of badass, and they're kind of electrical based and stuff like that. But there's a lot more to it too. And there's a little mystery involved. And they go into it. And the first 2 episodes are a tight story. And it's kind of cool. It's a good introduction arc. You really get to meet the characters and stuff. You get to see what they can do and them working together. And it's a really good place. And so if you're interested in D&D or interested in a new animated series, this is a good place to start. Just watch the first 2 episodes. If you like it, you're going to like the series. If it's not for you, you'll know pretty quickly. But you'll get at least the full story in 2 episodes. There'll be enough threads to continue on for the other 4. But not any that you're like, well, I have to watch the next one now, even though I don't like the show. It's a nice cutoff point. You get the 2 episodes. I recommend continuing. Episode 3 is really good as well. And episode 4, I don't know if they're doing in 2 blocks of 3 or if we just got 3 and then we're going to get 1, 1, 1. We will see on Friday. But the 3rd episode actually gets into Percy's past and introduces a different type of monster. And also Matthew Mercer is playing a bigger part in the 3rd episode. Also, there are characters that are drawn to look like Matt Mercer, and he pops up in each episode in a background role. So if you notice a guy with long brown hair down to about his shoulders with kind of an angular face, that's Matt Mercer, and he shows up in all the episodes. Yeah. There's some great characters, some recurring characters from the whole campaign. They're known as NPCs in the game. And again, Matt Mercer always played them in the game, but here there's some interesting casting choices. There's one in particular I want to look up. I don't remember who's playing him, but he's one of the bigger NPCs from the campaign. Where is it? Gilmore. And it's Sunil Malhotra is playing Gilmore, and he is this vendor that has all these magical items. It's Gilmore's Glorious Goods or whatever, something like that. And he's a big character. And and Matt always comes up with creatures or characters like that. In campaign 2, there's Pumat Soul, who is an amazing character as well. That's always popping back up. But again, the first episode is really good. The second one has a musical number that is a little disturbing. Scanlan, the character, is really kind of disturbing in all the best ways. But the show is really strong. It's got a really good cast. It's got good action. Now, they've upped the gore level a bit. There's a lot more violence and a lot more blood. Yeah. But Scanlan is great. And I probably should connect the dots. Scanlan is Sam Riegel. And if you watch any of Critical Role, he is always the one trying. He's the troublemaker. He's always trying to come up with the thing that's going to cause the biggest problem for Matt. During the game, he's always trying to cause Matt problems. So Scanlan is that type of character. Scanlan Shorthall, he's a gnome bard. Liam O'Brien plays, it's Vaxildan Vasar, the rogue. And he always plays the more intelligent, the more distant characters. Laura Bailey plays his twin, Vaxhala Vasar, who is the hunter who has chosen dragons as her particular enemy of choice or her greatest foe. So she senses when the dragons are present, stuff like that. And Laura always plays very interesting characters. This one's a little more refined. Her next character is probably my favorite. In the second season, she plays... I can't think of the character's name. It's got so much stuff happens in these shows, but she's great. Ashley plays another gnome named Pike, Ashley Johnson, and it's the healer. Marisha Ray always plays interesting characters as well. She's Keyleth, the druid here. In season 2, she plays a completely different character. She plays a monk who is very rough and aggressive. And then in the third campaign, she's almost a goth character. It's very weird. Travis Willingham plays Grog, Strongjaw, and he plays it exactly how you think he would. Very gruff, not very intelligent. This is kind of Grog. It's actually not a bad Grog imitation if you've watched the show. And of course, Taliesin Jaffe is Percival. If you want to see them play live, there is an episode of Critical Role, and it's a live episode. It's called The Search for Grog. It is the characters from Vox Machina, but it's after the campaign had completed, and they had moved on to campaign 2. They decided to do a live show in a theater with a live audience and play those characters again. And that is where I came in on. I had started watching campaign 2, was kind of having a hard time getting into it because it's a little different watching live play. But then I watched The Search for Grog. And it was so funny and so entertaining that it got me hooked. So If you like the animated show, give it the animated show a shot. You don't need to know anything about D&D. You don't need to know the voice actors or any of that stuff. You can sit down completely fresh and watch it. Everything you need is in the show. There's a lot of extra stuff, though, in it. There's a lot of Easter eggs for that whole campaign, other campaigns. For instance, when they go into Gilmore's Glorious Goods, there is a book that opens up and Pike takes a look at called Tusk Love. Now, it doesn't really matter. You don't need it for the story. But Tusk Love is a book that's brought up in the second campaign. And on the cover is actually two of the characters from the second campaign, Ford and, I can't think of the character's name, Travis and Laura Bailey's second campaign characters. By the way, Travis Willingham and Laura Bailey are married and recently had a child. So their characters tend to hook up, at least in that season. They don't in the first season. Marisha Ray and Matt Mercer are also married. So you've got a couple of couples in the cast. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really loved seeing these characters come to life with the same voice actors. You know, Sam Riegel is Scanlan or is Not the Brave, or, you know, you get kind of their voice and the stuff in the head. So even though you're seeing these characters as they're designed, you're hearing them as they're played. You're hearing Sam Riegel as Scanlan and doing the wild songs and saying all the inappropriate things. You're hearing Travis do Grog's slow, dim-witted voice. You're hearing the intensity that Taliesin Jaffe brings to Percy, who has such a dark, hidden past, or, you know, Ashley's innocence that she brings to Pike. There's some really great characters, and it's such a unique world that Matt Mercer has created. And now they've brought in writers to craft them into a story, and it is just a lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing the rest of the series. The other 6 episodes, I think, is what the total doing. Yeah, they might actually tell me here. Let's see. Oh, no, it's 12 episodes. Okay, it's 12 episodes and they're releasing 3 at a time. Oh, I love that. Because you're getting the binge watch and you're getting the week by week. That's a big debate right now, is whether shows are better if they're binge watched, if they're all dropped at once, or done over time. And if you drop them all at once, the fans love it because they can watch the whole thing, but then you lose all the word of mouth, you lose all the talking points, the anticipation. So from a business standpoint, it's better to release them over time. Here, they're kind of doing a little bit of both. Yeah, you're only getting you're getting them over time, but you're getting 3 episodes at a time. So this Friday coming up, we'll get Shadow's Gate, Fate's Journey, and Spark of Rebellion. Then episodes 7, 8, they don't have the titles for the next ones yet. 7, 8, and 9 on the 11th, 10, 11, and 12 on the 18th. So there's 12 episodes. That was a huge Kickstarter. And yeah, I'm so happy to see that it's 12 episodes and not just 6. They're going to cover a lot of stories here. So, all right. So that is Vox Machina. Like I said, I do recommend it. If you don't nothing about it, but you have Amazon Prime, at least watch the first 2 episodes, called The Terror of Taldore. It's a 2-parter, so watch the 2 episodes, and then you can go into Feast of Realms and just continue on from there if you like it. And if not, you tried it. So, but I do recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. That's going to wrap up the show today. One last check on the Kickstarter, seeing where we're at. A few more people signed up. We're at $49,547, so we're only $453 from reaching the final big goal. We want to hit a 50,000. So again, follow the link if you haven't yet. If you have, maybe you can share it with your friends. It'll be greatly appreciated. Jeff says, we'll need to add it to my Amazon queue. Thanks for the info, Dan. You're very welcome, Jeff. I think you will enjoy it. It's a really fun show. All right, guys, stick around for Comic Collectibles with Rex and John. And I don't know if we have anything else lined up for tonight, but definitely stick around for that. I will be back tomorrow to talk about that insane episode of Book of Boba Fett that actually has a Boba Fett cameo in it. See you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on The Experience. Good night, everybody.